We are going to run the virtual baby shower over again from the start. My name is Debbie McGuire. I'm the executive director here, and I'm really pleased that you can join us. If you have any questions, be sure to drop them into the chat, and we will try to answer them the best we can. So with no further ado, I'll let Matt get that going.
Hello, welcome to our first ever annual virtual baby shower. If you've been with us, thanks for staying. If you're new, welcome. Yeah, let's start out. We have starting out with a tour of the center and introduction with the history of the center by our wonderful executive director, Debbie McGuire. And let's go.
Hi, welcome everybody to the Wetlands and Wildlife Care Center's 2021 virtual wildlife baby shower. We are so pleased that you could join us today. I'm Debbie McGuire, I'm the executive director here, and I wanted to give you a little history of the Wetlands and Wildlife Care Center before we get going. We were first known as the Alliance for Wildlife Rehabilitation and Education back in the early 70s. And in 1972, we became the very first wildlife center to get licensed in the state of California. So back when the Alliance for Wildlife Rehabilitation and Education was developed by Greg Hickman and the late Dr. Joel Pascoe, they were sort of one of the first ones to put together all these licensed rehabilitators along with the state, and became part of the panel that put together Title 14. Now, Title 14 in the state of California is a really important document. It specifies everything that all of us licensed rehabilitators have to obey by, as far as caging and the type of species, how to release them, everything. It's all in that document, and we're really proud that our organization was part of that groundbreaking document. Okay, now that we're all ready, why don't we start our walk through the center? Why don't you come and follow me? So right now we are in the educational room, and you can see if you walk through that there's a lot of fun things that you can go through and see. So if you ever have a time, please come by. It's every Wednesday from 10 to 2 and the first and third Saturday of every month. Okay, now I'm going to walk you through the hospital right now. You can see that this is the hallway, and as if we walk down there, you'll see some windows that you can actually look through and observe the animals, but I'm going to take you guys behind the scene. So let's go. The first room we're going to go into is our examination room. So in the exam room, we would do the initial exam of some of our patients. Right now, we are in the midst of baby season, so we have a lot of babies here. So come on, and we'll take you back to our treatment area, which has been configured back into a baby nursery. So come on up. So here we go. This is normally a treatment area. We have a wet table that is now being used for other things. And all these cages are different types of babies. We have squirrels and opossums and ducklings and doves. And you can just see a lot of volunteer work to keep them all clean, fed. We monitor their weight and just make sure they can grow up to be healthy babies. So the next room we're going to go into is normally our recovery room, but it is also part of nursing. So in here you can see we have some new little ducklings that came in. They are staying in this room that's temperature controlled and a lot warmer than the other rooms. We have little doves in here. And then we also have a gopher snake. He's getting better. So this room is where everybody gets stable before we move them over to what we call the Butler Building, where they're a little bit bigger, and we're going to get them ready to go outside and get acclimated to the outside weather so we can return them. And then we also have a fully licensed veterinary hospital with the California Veterinary Medical Board, and we have a surgery room. So I'm going to show you that. Come on in. So this is where our veterinarians would do their surgeries. We have lighting, we have all of the equipment and everything they need. So we're really, really pleased. We have great veterinary staff that comes in licensed and does all kinds of surgeries here. So we're very fortunate to have that. So let me show you some more. Next, we just came out of our recovery room and we're back in the hallway, and I'm going to walk you in where we usually do our laboratory and our digital x-rays so you can see that. So come on in this way. So we are a working hospital, so we're very busy right now. We have some surgery packs out that we're cleaning, and we get ready to pack up and put in the autoclave that's next to it. We also have a microscope over here that we can do microbiology in. So we have that going. We have a couple different types of centrifuges so that we can do our blood tests. And we have a digital x-ray. So it's really great that we have this digital x-ray because we can actually email some of the images to our veterinarians if they're not here at the time. So we love having that. We can do it under anesthesia. So this is a machine that we can administer some anesthetic gas to help put the animals under slightly so that we can get nice, good, clean x-rays. Next, I'm going to take you into our very first building called the Butler Building. So come on in. This is animal intake. So this is where, if it was a pandemic, you'd come in and you'd be filling out your paperwork for the new animals that come in. Over here, remember, we are an oil spill center. So this is where we would wash oiled wildlife if it comes in. It is true, we use Dawn dishwashing soap. We have different bins that we use and wash them. And one of the tables we turned into a workstation for our technicians because we have about 500 patients here right now, so that's a lot of charting. Over here we have another intake area where animals can get their exam. We have incubators, we have other cages where we will stabilize while we move them through the process. You can see here we have a lot of volunteers working hard to keep this place clean. Over here is our kitchen where we prepare meals for 230 different species depending on what we have in the house at the time. Over here we call this our warm tepid pools or warm therapy pools, so we can put warmer water in here for the birds that need that. We also turn this into the rinse station during an oil spill. As we come further, we do a lot of laundry. This is usually going just constantly washing, drying, folding. We have a nice walk-in freezer for all the different types of foods that we need. And then back here is our different types of caging that we have. So we have bigger possums along here we call opossum row. So lots of opossums. Behind me are some bigger cages for larger birds. I'll be quiet. We can sneak a little quick peek at a great blue heron. So we have a couple of these bigger cages for the larger birds. And back around we have more smaller cages for some of the smaller birds like our grebes and our different waterfowl. So come on outside. So out here we have the juveniles. So the ones that have graduated out of nursery and they're now out here getting some fresh air and sunshine, help them grow. You can see we have some squirrels. Behind us will be some little ducklings. So we have ducklings in here. Bigger ducklings over here. Oh my goodness, more ducklings. Some over here. We have Mooch. Mooch just likes to visit us. Mooch is a snowy egret, in case of any of you ever see these beautiful birds out in the marshes. That's normally where you'll see them. But here we just have more and more and more ducklings, as you can see. Every single one of these cages has ducklings in it, except for this one. And I believe we have a black crowned night heron chick hiding in the back there. Yeah. This is a black crowned night heron chick, juvenile. So this is our 4-pen area. These animals, these babies and juveniles are usually stored in the Butler Building or this other building behind me during the evening, and then once the sun comes up, we go ahead and bring them outside so they can get that sunshine and fresh air. We are a very, very busy center. You can come. We want to see all you guys. Thank you so much for all your help. We really appreciate it. Here's one of our newer enclosures for mammals that was a big donation from Hope for Paws in October 2019. So thanks to them, we were able to update these cages. And I'll show you, in here we have mainly squirrels and opossums right now. So everybody in here is acclimating to the outside weather, and as soon as they've been out here for a while and show us that they know how to find food, forage, and are acclimated to the weather, we're going to be releasing them back to the areas that they came from. And lastly, we're in the outside area. We have 5,000 square feet of outside caging with some pools. And I'm going to show you a few of those. This first one we designed for the younger mallards, the juveniles. juvenile will soon be joining this cage. You can see they have lots of trees and hide places that they like. We have some Canada geese in here, all different ages. Injured adults and some orphans that came in that are bonding with the injured adults, so they'll probably all get to go together. One nice thing about geese is they will actually foster babies that aren't theirs, so it works out pretty good. Here's another cage. I'll open it up back here. And this is where we have more mallards. They're a little bit older. And they're just about ready for release. Where we'll keep pelicans and gulls and cormorants, things like that. We just released 3 American white pelicans, a California brown pelican, a herring's gull, and a western gull. So I don't have anyone to show you in here, but let's go see what it looks like. So you can see how nice and deep these pools are. They hold about 500 gallons when we fill them. Here's a cage that we use for our pelagic birds. So we have a nice big pool that we call a KD pool that has really fresh water circulating all the time with the pump, because we want that surface clean for these birds. So come on in. We have a pied-billed reef. Back here we have our mammal cages for raccoons and occasional hawks, the gray hawks when we get them in. So don't believe we have anybody in here right now, but you can see how they're nice and safe. Is our Shorebird Enclosures. Right now we had an overflow of doves, so we did put them in one of our cages. This one here we call the wet clover side. As you can see, we do have a way of bringing in water and sand. So you put a few hides in here, it makes a really nice habitat for some of those shorebirds that we get in. And over here is our dry clover side that we're using overflow of all the mourning doves and band-tailed pigeons that we've gotten in. So you can come see how we've set that cage up. It's very versatile. We've used it for different things over the years. So here we go. These are band-tailed pigeons on top, and they are actually the only native pigeon that we see. All the other pigeons that we see, those rock doves, are actually introduced species. And then down here you'll see some mourning doves. They're just graduating outside, so they stay in the smaller cage, and once they've acclimated, they get to go out to the full flight. And you'll see a few of them also out there. And another band-tailed pigeon at the top of that ficus tree.
Well, that's the end of the tour.
Hi, welcome everybody.
Does anybody have any questions?
I haven't seen any questions on the chat.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
But as
up
a-
next, yeah. Well,
Go ahead.
up next is our hummingbird rehabber, Ann Stratton, talking about her work with rehabbing hummingbirds that come in to our center and the network.
Look at it.
Hi, my name is Ann, and I'm one of the hummingbird rehabilitators with the Wetlands and Wildlife Care Center. I'm going to show you my rehab setup with all of the birds while I talk to you. I get asked about hummingbird feeders quite often. The correct solution to use is homemade, 4 parts water to 1 part sugar. Only use white granulated sugar. Organic sugar is not good for them. It's not refined enough, and the goal is to replicate the sugar that is found in flowers. So don't use brown sugar, honey, or any store-bought solutions, especially the ones with red dye. The red dye is not good for them. It's not good for their kidneys. Not good for us either. And if the feeder's been outside and you wouldn't drink it, then they probably shouldn't drink it either. I'm going to walk into my enclosure now. These are all the fledglings that were brought to me as babies. And the outside enclosure, we try and make it as natural as possible because there's a training period that the mothers go through with the babies for them to learn how to eat natural flowers, how to eat from feeders, and how to eat bugs. And so you can see I've got some perches up here that are unnatural and natural, and that way they can figure out what they're going to find when they're out there in the wild. I make bugs for them by getting old nasty fruit, and fruit flies come out and the birds love it, and this is what they eat. So we're going to feast on these right now for a while. So back to the feeders, you should change them every 2 to 4 days depending on how warm the weather is. The warmer the weather, the more often you should change them. I only use hot water and a brush to clean them with. If you find mold in there, then you need to clean them vigorously and just let it soak in hot water for a while, make sure all the mold's gone. You shouldn't really use bleach or vinegar. I guess you can, but you have to be absolutely sure that you got it nice and clean because you don't want them drinking any of that stuff. It's not good for us. See, he's really getting into the bugs right now down there. If you have an ant problem, ant mote's the best thing to use. You can buy them, or a lot of feeders come with them. And never use Vaseline. Some people put those on there to try and trap the ants, but these birds bump into each other all the time, and that means they're going to bump into the Vaseline. And if that happens, it interferes with their weatherproofing. So think about the Dawn commercials and the oiled wildlife. Same thing happens to the hummingbirds, and if they aren't waterproof, then they get cold at night and they pass away. One of the most common calls I get is that somebody's found a hurt or orphaned hummingbird, and if you find one of these, reach out to a rehabilitator right away. Do not feed them. You can contain the bird, reach out, and just take the advice that's given to you. You should never make it a do-it-yourself project because there's so many things that has to be done for these birds, and you don't want to make a mistake. They should never be released after you brought them in as a baby because they have to have this training period like they're getting in this aviary right now. Please call us. We are happy to give you advice. People ask if I leave the feeder out too long, will it stop them from migrating? No. They have an internal clock, and they will leave when they're ready to leave, and you can leave your feeder out for the stragglers, for the weak ones, for the young ones. That's a really nice thing to do, but it would never change their ability to migrate. Window collisions and cats are the two top reasons that we get hummingbirds. That's real high mortality for both of those. So if you have an outdoor kitty, please consider making it an indoor kitty. It's better for the cat, definitely better for the birds. And if you don't want to do that or can't do that, please don't invite birds to your yard. It's mean to invite them in saying, hey, this is a safe place, and then you've got a cat who's just going to do what a cat does. So don't put up feeders or friendly hummingbird plants and then have a cat catch them. Lots of people like to take pictures of hummingbirds, especially if you're honored with a nest. They will take pictures from the time that the nest begins to the time that the babies are hatched, all the way until the babies fledge. Please remember that if you can see them and a predator watches you take pictures, they're going to know where these birds are, and you're going to give them up, and they're going to end up getting killed by a cat, a squirrel. Crows are particularly smart. They watch us like crazy, and you don't want the hummingbirds to die because you were taking too many pictures of them. So be respectful of the nest, and always, if you're going to take pictures, do it from a distance. There's lots more information. I have a website, www.ifoundahummingbird.com. Check it out if you're interested, and thanks for tuning in.
Thank you. That was really good short information on hummingbirds. Were there any questions in the chat? I don't think so.
I was just going to mention that I think what I hope comes across watching her and rehabbers like her is that rehab is complicated. It's really, really complicated, and it's technical. And so that's why we urge people to not try doing it at home, because you can see, you know, not only does she have a ton of expertise, but she's also got a lot of equipment. And, you know, the entire process is really quite technical. So we just ask that you not try to take matters into your own hands, but contact a rehabilitator or contact us instead.
We forgot to introduce all of our panels when we started again. So except myself, I'm Debbie McGuire, the executive director. We have Debbie Wayne, so she's our operations manager. We have Dr. Liz Wood, she's one of our vets and a board member. And we have Matthew Gula, who is our development director. So we're all here to try to do our best and answer all your questions. So if you have any, just be sure to drop it in the chat. Okay.
Up next, we have our wonderful Dr. Elizabeth Wood answering questions that were sort of brought in by our community, and also talking about what we actually do at the center regarding veterinary care and the other services that we provide.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Wood, veterinarian at Wetlands and Wildlife Care Center. Thank you so much for being with us today. I wanted to have a chat with you to answer some questions that all of you have submitted to us. So I'm really happy that you're with us today. Thanks for supporting our spring baby shower event. And with that, I'm going to get started. So I have some photos to share with you today as a slideshow. If you are squeamish about anything medical, there may be some photos that you'd like to turn away from, but that's just the disclaimer. There's nothing particularly graphic, but just a little behind the scenes view of what we do at the center. So I hope you enjoy this. So the first question that we got was, what is the purpose of the center and what are you trying to do? So basically what we're trying to accomplish can be summarized as this: rescue, triage, medically treat, rehabilitate, and return to the wild any animals that are brought to us. So that's our goal with our patients. So the rescue portion is basically done for us. So usually animal control brings us patients, or people like you, members of the public, who find injured or orphaned animals. And then as far as medical treatment, this may consist of supportive care, which we'll talk a little more about, or repairing a wound, which may involve surgery, or medical treatment for whatever the issue is. And then once they're deemed medically stable, then we focus on rehabilitation. And so this basically consists of making sure that we evaluate their ability to swim or fly or forage, and basically just make sure that they are in top shape when they get released back into the wild, which is our ultimate goal. So our other goal is to protect and restore native wildlife populations. So when we talk about native species populations, what we're talking about are species that are native to the local ecosystem. So as opposed to invasive species, species that are introduced to the ecosystem and are problematic because they may compete with the local population for resources or for space. They may not have natural predators, and so they can offset the balance of the ecosystem. So a great example is outdoor or feral cats. So just because an animal is outdoors doesn't necessarily mean it's part of the native wildlife population. So they're problematic because they can threaten our native species by competing for resources, or because they, are an introduced predator. So a lot of what we do is aimed at combating detrimental human activities. So when people ask, why are we intervening at all in natural processes? Well, the reason is unfortunately because we're undoing a lot of human damage. So this may consist of oil spills, animals that have been entangled in fishing line or with fishing hooks, animals that have been hit by cars or even shot by a BB or even by a real handgun. Animals that have potentially hit the window of a building and suffered head trauma from a window strike. Animals that have been attacked by our pet dogs and cats, who have experienced habitat loss or destruction because of human activities or draining wetlands. Animals that have ingested toxins, or even have suffered because of noise and light pollution. And then, of course, because of invasive species and just ecosystem imbalance. So there's a lot of ways that we impact their environment. And so a lot of our activities are aimed at undoing some of that damage, unfortunately. So, our animals really are part of, a lot of our patients are part of an ecosystem that we're a part of. And it's really important that as we put animals back out into the wild, we're helping to restore some of this natural balance. And so that's a big part of what we are trying to do here. And so we live within this ecosystem too, right? And so, it's really important that we live responsibly within our natural world and that we protect our natural resources for both our use and our enjoyment and just the balance of the world that we live in. So there's a great metaphor in a book that I really like called Song of the Dodo, where we talk about ecosystems as being very similar to a really beautiful rug, where if you start to pull threads out of it and it starts to unravel, it starts falling apart and it no longer has the same integrity and the same beauty and the same purpose. And so that's when we put animals back out into the wild, we're focusing on really maintaining and restoring total ecosystem health, both for our benefit and the benefit of all the other creatures that live within it. So our next question is, how did you become involved with the center? So I have always had a love of wildlife conservation and ecology. Where I went to undergrad in Santa Cruz, there were lots of these redwood trees around, and I majored in evolutionary ecology, biology, and environmental studies. So this has always been very dear to my heart. I've done some field work in ecology, both in the US and abroad, and have worked with wild animals at zoos and at other practices. And then after veterinary school, I was working at another local animal hospital and running a small wildlife program out of the hospital, but I ultimately decided that I really wanted wildlife to be a bigger percentage of what I was doing. And I already had a relationship with the center and just started spending a lot more time there. So I feel really grateful to be able to be so involved at the center at this point, especially because it gives me the ability to work with wildlife is a larger percentage of my total career. All right, so our next question is, what does an average day working at the center look like? All right, so when I first arrive at the center, I check in with our amazing technician team because they are really at the front lines of doing patient triage and evaluating what the patients are going to need during their time with us. And so they let me know which ones need my attention. So we do evaluations of patients based on their level of critical need. We tend to do the surgery cases first because they tend to have more immediate need of medical attention. And then we move on to recheck exams. So these are on patients that have been with us a little bit longer. This is a coot who's getting an evaluation of a leg wound that required surgery. So we do recheck exams, bandage changes, wound care, things like that after the surgery patients. And a lot of the time are amending medical plans, changing what medication regimens they're going to be on. And all of that is, all of those plans and all of those changes are then carried out by the technician team. So we do a lot of in-house x-rays, and what's really great is we have an in-house digital x-ray system, which is wonderful because then I get to have results of that imagery very rapidly. So this is a little bat who's getting some x-rays taken. And the really nice thing too is we do the vast majority of our x-rays under anesthesia for a couple of reasons. One, we get really nice positioning, so it allows me to get the best evaluation possible of whatever their medical situation is. And the second thing is that it's much less stressful for the animals. So our wildlife species really wind up a lot more stressed with human handling than we're used to in our pet animal species. So we try to handle them the minimal amount possible. And when possible, if we can do things under anesthesia, it really reduces their level of stress because they're not aware of anything that's happening. So we can get closer looks at wounds. We can get really nice x-ray views, things like that with a lot less stress to the animal. So here's another view of an x-ray. So I'm taking a look at this fracture here, and this x-ray with immediate results allows me to evaluate these kinds of things without delay. And here's a patient who had some bandages replaced. So this is a brown pelican. Here's a little coot who is having a surgery wound reassessed. So this was a surgical, a post-surgical bandage that was placed on this toe here. And so part of a recheck exam under anesthesia is to remove that bandage and see how things are progressing and then replace it if needed. So the next question that we received is, what are some of the more common procedures that you do on wildlife? So there are quite a few that happen on a regular basis, but unfortunately one of the more common procedures is repairing lacerations or other wounds as a result of fishing line or hooks that are embedded. And we also need to remove things like BBs or metal pellets from animals that have unfortunately been shot. So we also perform procedures to remove dead tissue from older wounds and injuries. So while nature really does an amazing job of healing, sometimes the way that things heal is not completely ideal for a total return to function. So sometimes we can do some surgical intervention on an injury that was causing long-term problems for that animal, and we can improve that and help correct that. So that would involve a surgery. We've also recently expanded our array of orthopedic instruments, which is very exciting, so that I can try to repair fractures more often when necessary. Another thing that we've touched on a couple of times is that we are reassessing wounds and replacing bandages under anesthesia, so that's quite common, and that way we can reduce the restraint needed and, like we talked about, decrease stress. There's lots of miscellaneous procedures such as draining abscesses, little eyelid surgeries or delicate tissue surgeries, and I'll go over some of those. We also sometimes debride or remove dead tissue from certain wounds that are in the process of healing. Another one is we have to sometimes remove or pluck broken feathers to encourage them to regrow faster. So fun fact, feathers can't grow after they're broken. They can only fall out or molt and then grow back at the shaft. So if we want to speed up that process, we pluck the feather, but we do it under anesthesia so that the patient won't feel it. There are also some feathers that have a blood supply, and if that feather breaks, that can result in a large amount of blood loss that we definitely want to avoid. So if we see a broken feather with a blood supply, known as a blood feather, we may opt to pluck that under anesthesia so that that blood supply doesn't become a problem going down the road. Another one that happens fairly often is that we need to do surgical pouch repairs on pelicans. So here's one example of that after surgery. And these are usually caused by hooks and fishing line as well, unfortunately. So that's just after anesthesia. So as that heals, it looks normal again, and the pouch retains its elasticity for catching those big fish they like to eat. And here's another one. So in this image, the pelican's eye is here, the beak is facing this way, the neck is going this way, and this is the pouch laceration that was repaired. So this is after surgery as well. So things tend to look a little bit inflamed right after surgery, but during the process of healing, as we do subsequent recheck exams, then things start to look more and more like the normal tissue. All right, so the next question is, what is the most interesting case you've worked on at the center? So a lot of our cases are interesting, but I'm going to highlight a couple of the ones that are ongoing or have happened recently. So this girl is a really interesting case. This is a female mallard, and you may notice that she came to us with this really tiny eye opening. So on closer inspection, the eye itself was normal, but the eyelids were mostly closed over the eye, right in this area. So it was causing her to do a lot of abnormal behavior. She was holding her head in a strange way, trying to look out of her good eye. She was doing a lot of odd body movements. And so we wanted to attempt a surgical procedure to help restore normal vision. So I was able to collaborate with a couple different board certified ophthalmologists. And we attempted a procedure that was aimed at opening up this eyelid so that she could see better. And this is a picture of the surgical procedure itself, and then the result after surgery, which was beautiful. And she could see really nicely. She started holding her body more normally. She stopped doing all of the abnormal behavior, and everything healed up really nicely until about a week later when it closed again. And so her case has been a little bit surprising since the initial surgery went so well, but the eye wound up closing all the way back to how it looked on her initial presentation to the center. So after some more consulting, and because she was doing so well, we just finished doing a second attempt at the procedure with a slightly different technique. So we're going to see if the second attempt works better than the first, but she's a really interesting case to follow. And in the meantime, she's a happy girl. She's one of our most vocal ducks with a lot of personality. And so she's been doing well in the interim between surgeries. Her pain level after surgery was well controlled. So she's doing really well, and we're going to see if this second attempt is any more successful. Another case that was recent was this really awful 3-pronged fish hook was stuck in the esophagus of a coot, American coot. And obviously that's a bad place for the hook to be stuck because it was impeding his ability to eat. And so we attempted a surgical procedure. Because of the 3 prongs, it can't just be backed out. So I did a surgery to actually open up the esophagus and remove the hook. And that can be a risky surgery because during healing, the 2 sides of the esophagus can just grow together and close off the esophagus, leaving the bird unable to swallow. But that did not happen with our amazing tech team. They basically went through a process of dripping a liquid food slurry multiple times a day down just past that surgical incision so that we wouldn't get that closure of the two walls of the esophagus. And because of all of that treatment, this coot did really well and has been released. So that was a success and was very satisfying, and was definitely a collaborative effort. And it's always a collaborative effort with our tech team, because the medical plans that I make wouldn't happen without all their efforts. So this was a great one too. Another one is we had this very charismatic pelican come into us with a lot of fishing hooks stuck in the feet that unfortunately had resulted in a lot of dead tissue around where the fishing hooks were. So we removed those hooks and then wound up putting him under anesthesia and removing all of the dead tissue that was around the areas where the hooks had been. And then I had to do a little bit of a plastic surgery type of procedure to pull together the remaining pieces of tissue and basically reform a foot shape that was as close to his normal foot shape as possible so that he could still walk around. And he has done beautifully after surgery and in recovery. He was able to use his new feet completely normally, and he was just released. So that was really exciting. And we've got pictures of that release up on our social media pages. So that went really well. So this leads me nicely into a next question, which is, what is your favorite species to treat at the center? So I have so many favorites, but I have to say that pelicans are one of my absolute favorites. So this is the American white pelican. We also see lots of brown pelicans, and I just love working with them both. As you can see from this picture, they are huge animals. They have a massive wingspan, and when I work with them, it just feels like working on a dinosaur. They're just majestic and really incredible animals. So they're definitely in my top favorites. Here's some more pelicans. This is one of our outdoor pens where the pelicans are just prior to release, where we can evaluate how they move around, how they swim, how they interact, how they forage for fish. And so these guys have all been successfully released, which is just an absolutely wonderful feeling. Another one of my favorites are the cormorants. So we see a couple different species, the Brandt's cormorant, the pelagic cormorant, and the double-crested, and they're just really sleek, really beautiful animals that are so well adapted to doing a lot of things really well. So they are amazing divers where they catch their prey during dives. They fly, of course, but also can walk, and so they just are really well adapted to the type of life that they have catching fish out in the ocean. So really, really beautiful animals. And the males have really striking blue mating plumage too, which is really beautiful to see this time of year. And then another of my favorites in the mammal world are the raccoons. So I just love how dexterous they are with their amazing little opposable thumbs. And I really like that they're just these mischievous little bandits. So as you can see here, we have to try to outsmart them when they are transported to rehabilitators, because they can open locks and cages. And so as seen here, we have to do a lot of creative closures on our carriers so that they can't manage to figure out their way out of them, they're just amazing little animals. So on a side note, if you do have raccoons moving into your yard, they do carry a parasite that can be dangerous to people. And so at the center, we take a lot of extra precautions with them. If you find them in your yard, just make sure that you're staying away from any area that they may be using the bathroom, which they call a latrine. And if they are becoming a nuisance, just give animal control a call rather than trying to take matters into your own hands. But they are really fun, amazing little resourceful animals. Next question is, what is something you want everyone to know about what you do? So this is certainly an important one. So if I could leave everyone with one thought, it's really that I would like everyone to know how important it is to leave wildlife wild. So a lot of the time when we post pictures of what we do and we look at images like this of this amazing barn owl, a really common, this guy is sedated, by the way, so otherwise his talons would be quite dangerous to us. But a really common reaction is, oh, I wish I could have one. And I would really like us to have a mindset change toward really rooting for these animals to be released and to stay wild. And along that same vein, protecting their home in the wild, their ecosystems, so that they can stay wild. So I would like for that to be, you know, our reaction when we see these animals, that, oh, I hope I get to see one in the wild, or I hope he gets to stay wild, or I hope he is released back into the wild, you know, rather than wanting to keep them as captive pets. So I would really like us to, you know, channel our love for them by wanting to remain wild. I'm actually really relieved when our patients dislike us. And the reason is because when they start to turn that corner and they start to recover, they start to develop kind of a healthy fear of human interaction. And that means they're going to be more successful after they're released out into the wild. So to me, that's a measure of success. I take no personal offense. I'm really happy about it when it starts to happen. The other thing that I would like to leave everyone with is I would like for us to try to separate our perception of animal cuteness from an animal's importance to an ecosystem. So, you know, we've got our really cute animals, and we all have our favorites, and I do too, and you know, everyone that works at the center definitely does. But we want to remember that the animals that are maybe in the traditionally less cute category are still really important to our ecosystems, especially when they are native wildlife. Look how cute though. But they're all important. So another question that we had was, what is your favorite moment taking care of wildlife? So like we talked about before, I really love that moment when a patient starts to get stronger and we know that they're going to do well during treatment and that they're going to be released. And then along with that, the very best moments are when animals are released back into the wild. We just have such a love of those moments. It's our ultimate goal. It's the most wonderful feeling, and it's why we do what we do. So the next question is, what would you say to anyone wanting to do what you do? So I recommend shadowing or volunteering someone within the wildlife world to get an idea of what our day-to-day is like, and if it's something you think you might enjoy. We are often dirty. It is not often glamorous, but it is always rewarding and challenging and fun. And we all really love it. And we all love that the day-to-day is always different. Never a dull moment. So if this is something that you might want to get involved in, try to shadow and volunteer, just get out there and explore, ask questions. There are a huge array of jobs within our field for you to explore. And the other thing is that Wetlands and Wildlife Care Center always needs volunteers, and not just in medical care. There's lots of ways to get involved. So please contact us if you're interested in pursuing that further. The next question, which is possibly the most important, is what are some things that our viewers and the public can do to prevent some of the things you have to treat? So I will say, you know, if we didn't have to do what we did, we would consider that success, because we, like we talked about before, we're doing so much repair of human-caused issues with wildlife. So if we had to do less of that, we would be really happy about that, because that would mean that our ecosystems are healthier. So here are some things that you can do. So number one, pick up your trash. This is probably the most important. Even better, try to pick up other trash that you may see out there. Bonus points for that. Please do it safely, especially if there are any hooks or needles involved. And if you are someone who fishes, please clean up after yourself. Please try to take all of your fishing line and hooks with you. If it gets tangled on things, it is your responsibility to try to detangle and take with you as much as you can within reason and safely. The next one is, if any wildlife in your area is becoming a nuisance, please call your local animal control. They are really devoted animal lovers. They're amazing animal professionals. If they can't help you with your specific situation, they can direct you to someone who can. So please use that resource and don't take things into your own hands. So number 3 is please call us or another licensed wildlife rehabilitator if you're not sure about whether you should intervene with a wild animal. So if you're not sure if what you're seeing is an orphaned or an injured animal, just give us a call. We really want to be your community resource for wildlife care. Especially around baby bird season, which is now, we can tell you if an animal really needs to come in to see us, or if it can be put back into the nest, or if it's old enough to survive on its own. And, not everything does need to come into the center. So a lot of babies have better success in the wild with just a little bit of help to keep them out of harm's way. So this may mean putting a baby back up into a nest, or putting a baby in a box back into a tree or a bush where it's away from cats and out of harm's way, but where the parents can come still take care of it. So it's not true if you touch it that the parents will reject it. So if you're unsure about what you're seeing, just give us a call and we can help you decide if it's something where you need to intervene. And if you don't feel comfortable intervening, you can certainly give animal control a call to help you with that. So just give us a call. Certainly if something is injured, then that patient should come in to us. But there are lots of instances where our animals can stay out in the wild with a little bit of an adjustment and be better off for your intervening, but without bringing it all the way in to see us. So just give us a call and we can help you decide what to do if you're unsure. Okay, so number 4 is please keep your pet cat inside if possible. So our feral cat populations and our outdoor house cat populations really do have a negative effect on our native bird population. So we are seeing birds declining in populations in California and throughout the US and all around the world as a result of cats, which are an introduced predator for them. So if you can, just take your kitties outside on a harness and on a leash, supervised time. Or if they must go outside, then have them wear a breakaway collar with a bell on it that can scare away birds, and that's really helpful. The other thing is to please spay and neuter your pet cats and dogs so that we can avoid adding to the outdoor feral and stray populations. And for your dogs, please only walk your dogs in areas that do not have posted signs about avoiding them because of natural native bird habitats. So there are places where you shouldn't walk your dog because of snowy plover habitats and things like that, where dogs can be disruptive to the ecosystem. So just please pay attention to those signs, have fun with your furry friends, but just do it in a way that it doesn't have a negative impact on the ecosystem. So just be a responsible pet owner. Number 5 is never buy a wild animal as a pet, and please don't support the illegal wildlife pet trade. So I know this seems obvious, but there's lots of ways in which people do it without meaning to. So if having an exotic pet is something that's important to you, just be very mindful of where you get that animal. Try to have it be from a rescue organization, an animal that can't be released out into the wild or something along those lines, or from a captive breeding endeavor from a responsible person. And be sure that you're following the laws and just not inadvertently contributing to the illegal wildlife pet trade, because that is something that is contributing to species loss all around the world. So just be very mindful of that if you choose to make that choice. You can always reach out to local exotics veterinarians who can give you more information if needed. And number 6 is really important, which is just try to be an overall good steward of the environment. So a lot of us can make little changes to just tread a little lighter on this planet that we all inhabit together. And these can be little changes, things like riding your bike, things like avoiding single-use plastics or avoiding plastic bags and taking your reusable bags to the grocery store, and just being mindful of, some of the choices that you make as far as things that you buy, remembering to recycle. Like I mentioned before, being careful where you obtain animals if you choose to do that. So just be mindful, just be aware that, we all have an impact and we can all take some steps somewhere in our lives to minimize it as much as possible. And the last one is come volunteer with us. Or if you, if that's not something that interests you, then consider a donation to support what we do. So help our cause, help us help the wildlife around us, help us try to maintain the health of the ecosystems that we're all part of, and help us maintain that balance within the natural world that we all inhabit. So thank you so much for your support. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring about wildlife. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Wood, veterinarian at Wetlands and Wildlife Care Center. Thank you so much for
Thank you, Dr. Wood. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's okay, Matt. That was a lot of good information. If anybody has any questions for Dr. Wood, she is here. We can put it in the chat if you would like. I didn't see any questions though. But yeah, that was very informative. Thank you, Dr. Wood.
You're
And if
welcome,
you're
everyone.
interested in volunteering, you can go to our webpage and sign up there for the next class. We do need volunteers.
Yes, we do. We need volunteers. And if you would like to donate, you could do that as well on our website. There's a donate button as well on that.
Does anyone have any medical questions? Oh, thank you. Thanks for being here.
So next thing we have up is something that we do at the center a lot of, and it's sort of, especially now, because right now we have probably north of 300 or 400 ducks, is trying to keep track of everything. And that involves, when we're moving them between cages, counting them to make sure we have the number that we're supposed to. So what we have here is a way for you to try and guess how many ducks you're going to have in the next cage based on what's in the video. And before we start this, you can drop, if you want, how many ducks you think are in this cage. They do seem to move around a bit, and the camera does too, and I apologize for that. But like I say, they're living creatures with their own personalities and their own free will, so they're going to go wherever they want.
Any guesses? Just type in the number you think in chat. Gabby says 36. Good guess. Yes, Dr. Wood, you can't guess. 48, 38, these are all good guesses. Keep them coming. I don't know, it looks like a whole lot of ducks to me.
Don't forget the ones in the shadows.
Oh, I forgot them. 60.
Oh, ooh, it's close.
And it's very close.
Yeah.
Any more guesses?
Well,
You guys want to know?
yeah. The actual number of ducks in that particular cage on that day was 51 ducklings, and they are all sort of moving around in there. The numbers always change because we're always moving ducks as they develop and become larger and grow in size to the additional cages. So keeping track of them is important. They all have numbers, but yeah.
So it looks like Jane, you won with 48. You're only 3 off. That's pretty good. Congratulations.
This is fun for the technicians that have to go in there and actually have accurate patient counts before moving them around.
Yes.
So next up, we have basically, our great vet tech, Denise Brown, feeding fox squirrels and talking a little bit about them. And let's begin.
So this is a fox squirrel, and I don't know if you can hear it, but she's making her hungry sound right now. So we are going to feed her.
Yeah. And about how old do you think that baby is?
So she came in earlier. She was actually with one of our home care specialists because she was so little. At this point, she's probably about 5 weeks old, and she'll probably be here in nursery until she's about 8 weeks old.
So she's been with us for quite some time.
Yeah, she's been
And
with
home
us for
care.
a while at this point. And it looks like initially she came in from, she came because the nest got knocked down during tree trimming.
Yeah, not the right time to be tree trimming right now.
Unfortunately, it does end up sometimes causing orphans, so.
Yes.
As you can see, she really likes this formula. It's especially made for squirrels, and she is a big fan.
So tell me a little bit about the formula that you...
So we have a formula that's made for wildlife. We use the brand Fox Valley, and they make different formulas for different species. So this is the squirrel formula, and then we mix it with water. You don't want to use things like cow's milk because a lot of species actually don't handle cow's milk very well. It can be really harmful for them. So you want to make sure that they're getting the right food. And this is complete nutrition for squirrels when they're babies, and then they'll start adding something that we call rodent block, which is complete nutrition for adults or bigger rodents, and then also fruits and vegetables. And that way we know that they're getting all the nutrients they need, enough fat, enough different vitamins, protein, so that they have good healthy bones and muscles and can grow up to be big healthy squirrels.
They're really cute.
Yeah. And she really likes her formula. So normally I do this one-handed and I get the next one on deck. I know I was too slow, so that I can just offer her the next one.
So she was abandoned because of tree trimmers. Did she have any siblings?
Not with us.
Is that a she or a he?
It is a he,
That's what
actually.
it looked like it was a he.
You can't actually tell just by looking at their face, but
I was
sometimes
looking at down there.
sometimes you can tell. Yeah, so we don't have a report of any siblings coming in, which probably means that at least one of them didn't make it. But we don't know for sure. Okay, I know, I'm going too slow. I know. Okay.
So how much longer do you think he'll be in here?
In here, so if he's 5 weeks, typically they wean around 7 to 8, so probably another good 2 to 3 weeks.
And then he'll go out to the...
Then he'll go out to the rolling cages and eventually to the outdoor cages.
And how many of those do you feed him?
It depends on his weight. So at his current weight, he's having about 6. And he's going to pretend that I haven't given him enough, but you can check his tummy and see when it's full and say, no, you've had enough for now. His tummy actually does look pretty full, so we're gonna stop here. And then we want to make sure that they don't end up with formula stuck to the fur around their face, because that can stick to it and then it can fall off. And we don't want any bald squirrels, so we just make sure to finish by cleaning him off with water.
Do you hear him? Can you hear his noises?
Oh, now you've stopped.
You can totally see why they call them squirrels, because they're squirrely.
They really are. So now he's been fed, he's been cleaned, and we're gonna go ahead and put him back in his cage.
Is he by himself?
He's by himself right now. When we get in more fox squirrels, they at this age can be friendly with each other and live together. But right now he's the only one that we have. So he's by himself, but he does have some things to snuggle with in his cage. He has some things to chew on, and he's got a hammock so he can play on his own.
Perfect.
Okay, any questions? I think we had a few.
It's a good reminder to, be mindful of what time of year you choose to do yard projects, landscaping projects, tree trimming, and things like that. It's better to do those things in the cooler months, not during baby animal season, which is now. So again, any questions, give us a call. There are some more eco-friendly tree trimming services that can make those suggestions as well. But then we avoid some of the downed nests and problems like this one.
Up next, we have our Dr. Kumar discussing why opossums do not make good pets, and really they should not be, you should really not take them in as pets, and you should take them to a class. Let's go.
Hello, my name is Dr. Jen Dietz Kumar, and I am the Director of Veterinary Services at Wetlands and Wildlife Care Center, as well as a general practitioner in Orange County. At my private practice, I care for a wide variety of animals, including exotic species. I frequently receive phone calls requesting care for wild animals that have been taken in as private pets. Veterinarians are permitted to provide humane veterinary care to any injured, ill, or orphaned wild animal. I am always happy to help an animal in need, no matter the species. However, when these wild animals are taken into private homes by unlicensed or untrained individuals, it can lead to a host of medical issues caused by incorrect husbandry. The term husbandry refers to the care of animals, including nutrition, housing, temperature, humidity, etc. The most common wild animal that I care for at my practice is the Virginia opossum. The opossum is the only marsupial native to North America. Unlike most wild animals, it flourishes in urban areas. They are often seen as pests, and in many states, it is illegal to keep this species as a pet. Nevertheless, many people seek out orphaned juvenile opossums as pets. Hand-reared opossums are too habituated to humans and are unable to be released into the wild. Opossums can suffer from a large range of diseases, many of which are zoonotic. A zoonotic disease means that it can be transmitted to people. Several examples of these diseases include fleas, ticks, ringworm, a bacterium called leptospirosis that can cause kidney and liver failure, and even rabies. I see a variety of nutritional problems in captive opossums. Marsupials have a much slower metabolic rate, about 30% lower compared to all other mammals. They are opportunistic feeders, and this behavior is often used as a bonding ritual with their family. Their voracious appetite and slow metabolism inevitably leads to obesity. Clinical signs of obesity include a bulging tail base and fat protruding behind the eye, which causes them to look surprised all the time. These animals have great difficulty moving around and tire easily. In addition to obesity, another common nutritional problem is called metabolic bone disease. This disease occurs from a lack of or improper balance of calcium and phosphorus. Fractures, hind end weakness, and paralysis are common consequences of metabolic bone disease. Both obesity and metabolic bone disease occur only after months or even years of inappropriate feeding and are entirely preventable. I highly recommend that all captive opossums are spayed and neutered. Intact animals display restlessness, pacing, drooling, scent marking, and sometimes aggression. They also have a higher risk of chronic urinary tract infections, endometritis, which is a painful inflammation of the uterus, and a Cushing's-like syndrome, which is a type of endocrine disease. To highlight these health concerns, I would like to introduce you to a recent patient named Nugget. This 3-year-old unspayed female opossum presented to me for an acute onset of hind end weakness. Her physical exam revealed a severe flea infestation, obesity, noted by the large fat pad on her tail, Cushing's-like disease, as seen by the hair loss in her tail, and hind end paralysis. You can see in the video how she is unable to move her back legs. Her x-rays showed evidence of metabolic bone disease and a very large urinary bladder stone, which was likely caused by a long-term untreated urinary tract infection. Her well-intentioned family made the loving decision to have her humanely euthanized. Unfortunately, the majority of Nugget's medical problems could have been avoided by feeding her a well-balanced diet and seeking preventative care by a veterinarian. Medical care and rehabilitation of wild animals must be performed by licensed individuals. If you encounter an orphan juvenile opossum or an injured adult, we encourage you to bring it to Wetlands and Wildlife Care Center so that we can determine the best course of action. Thank you so much for joining us today during the baby shower and supporting our efforts to care for these amazing animals.
Such good information. Dr. Wood, there was a question from Kent, I believe you wanted to answer.
Yeah, I saw, this is a great question, not related to the opossums, but related to what we were talking about earlier. He says, what can you say about food supplies for wild animals in a metro area? Do they find all the food they need? Are there any threats to natural food supplies for the animals in urban areas? And if so, what should be done about that? It's a great question because we keep mentioning that it's ideal to just let wildlife be wild. And I know a lot of people really want to help and intervene. And in the morning session, we talked a little bit about when you should try to attract wildlife to your yard and when it's best not to. So what I would say is, I think that overall, they do find all the food they need for the most part. I think when we're talking about rodents, squirrels, possums, raccoons, I think for the most part, they find what they need. They are very resourceful. Our birds, you know, as we deal with climate change and we deal with cats and we deal with some other stressors to our bird populations, I think they find enough food, but I think that their physiology might be a little more stressed in the wild. So it is okay to put out a bird feeder, and it's basically a supplement for the birds. It's not intended to really be a substitute for their food because the commercial bird foods are actually very high in fat and calories, those seed-based diets, but that can be okay as a supplement to a bird that is living in a very tight range of caloric needs. You know, it's sort of a supplement for them. If that were their entire diet, like sometimes it is in our pet birds, it's actually not an appropriate diet to be the whole diet. So if you have a pet bird, it's not appropriate for them to be on an all seed diet any more than it would be for a wild bird. So basically, to summarize, it can be an okay addition to their diet, like a supplement, as long as you have also created a yard that is safe for birds in general. So You don't want to put up a bird feeder and attract birds to your yard if you have outdoor cats or feral cats or other hazards like pesticides in your yard. But if you've already created a wildlife friendly yard and you want to supplement a little bit of seed for our wild birds, then I think that that's okay. But when it comes to squirrels, possums, raccoons, other animals like that, then I would say just don't get involved. Same with rabbits, any other native wildlife. I think the one exception is the birds, because they've got such tight physiologic needs in the wild, and so giving them some extra calories, especially for birds in colder seasons or birds that may be migrating, that can be okay because it's not intended to be their whole diet. So I hope that answers your question. I think overall they are finding enough food, but in the case of birds, as long as you have a safe yard, it's okay to supplement it.
Would we have one more question where it says, I'm sure you have mentioned this before, but what can one do if you find an injured baby wildlife?
This is a really good question. So it depends is the short answer. So if something is truly injured or orphaned, and you feel comfortable picking it up, you can bring it into us. If you're not sure about what you're seeing, if you're not sure if you're comfortable picking it up or if it needs help, give us a call first. It never hurts to give us a call and ask. We can talk about what you're seeing, what species it is. Does it really need help? Because a lot of animals don't necessarily need help. They may be big enough to survive in the wild. They may just need a little bit of extra help from you to put them in a box and tuck them away somewhere safe from cats, up in a branch of a tree that you can reach or something like that. They don't all need to come in. But if it's injured or if it's orphaned and you talk with us and we agree, then you can definitely come bring it into us. If you live in, it's also region specific. So if you live in San Diego, there are a couple different resources down there like Project Wildlife or their local humane societies. If you live up in LA, there's the California Wildlife Center. There's a Fund for Animals. There's other resources. So just give us a call and we can talk you through it. And if you don't feel comfortable picking it up, Animal Control is a great resource for helping you transport it.
I would like to also emphasize that to make that phone call, to talk to somebody before you bring it in. What we don't want is for you to bring it in and us to say, I'm sorry, it's too big. It's not a baby. I know it looks small, but it's not. So definitely try to contact us. If someone doesn't answer the phone, which there's a possibility of that from time to time as well, is you could always get on our website and you can there's an email that you can email me and I would respond to that as well. But definitely want to, especially when it comes to baby opossums and stuff, because a lot of times they look really small, but they're not. And so we're not, under our permit, we can't take perfectly healthy, self-sufficient wildlife. So definitely a phone call is good. It saves some time. A lot of times, 90% of the phone calls we get, we tell them to put them back in the wild. So, just keep that in mind that sometimes they look really small, but they're really not. A lot of times they're teenagers or just adults.
Or they look stranded or abandoned and they're not. Parents may just be away from the nest, or babies might be learning how to fly, or branchers or fledgling birds, maybe learning how to acclimate and forage. And so if they've fallen on the ground, we definitely want to get them out of harm's way, away from cats, away from cars and things like that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we need to see it. So totally agree. Give us a call. We can talk you through what we're seeing. We don't expect everyone to be able to make that call, make that choice on their own. So give us a call.
Definitely.
All right. Up next, we have a video on mourning dove with one of our vet techs, Denise Brown.
Okay, this is a mourning dove. This is a fledgling mourning dove. And so these are kind of like the teenagers, young teenagers. We get mourning doves of all ages. So when they come in as very new babies, they're bald, or once their feathers dry, they're really fluffy. Once they start to have real feathers like this, those are fledglings. When they come in as babies, they need to be on very high heat, so they're in an incubator. They need to be hand-fed once an hour, once every 2 hours for about the first week, and then as they get older, they start to peck on their own. One of the fun things is they're very social, so if they should be starting to peck developmentally and we're not seeing that, you can put them with another mourning dove who is pecking and they'll copy them. Or sometimes you can even just play the sound of mourning doves pecking at seed and it will get their instinct going to start pecking, and they'll start pecking on their own. So they get tube fed. They have basically a two-stomach system, and so they don't drink, or the way that most songbirds feed is that the babies open their mouth and the mom or dad puts food into their mouth, but these guys are actually the other way. Both parents produce food for them, and the babies dip into the parents' mouth to drink the food that they've made. So because they don't gape like songbirds, we have to put it into their mouths, into the tube. And we also have some special syringes that mimic the way that mom and dad feed them, like that, where they can eat on their own as they get a little bit older. And then as they do get older, we make sure that they're eating the right foods, that they, again, are meeting all of the developmental milestones as far as being able to walk, fly, having good feather quality. And eventually they'll get to a point where they fledge and they start to fly. And to be honest, that's usually the point where we have the most well-meaning but unnecessary intervention from the public, is at the fledgling stage, because they can jump out of their nest, they're trying to learn how to fly, and it might take them a day or two. So people will sometimes call us because there's a bird on the ground and it can't fly, and in the case of a fledgling, that's perfectly normal. It may jump out of the nest and be on the ground for a day or 2 days, maybe even a little bit longer, and they're just figuring out how to fly, and they'll eventually take off. So if you see a bird that you think is like a dove or a pigeon, and it has feathers, it's not really fluffy, just observe it for a little bit before you make any decisions. If it looks like it can walk without a limp, if you don't see any blood, if it's not really, really lethargic or like on its back or in an uncomfortable position, if it's just walking around, that's probably fine. And both parents for mourning doves take care of them, and they take care of them when they're on the ground fledging as well. So they'll bring them food, they are monitoring them. Sometimes you don't see parents, but if you walk towards the baby, you'll start to hear doves in the area, and that's the parents who are watching the situation. So they communicate with them, they bring them food until they're ready to fly, and they're still really well cared for even though they're out of the nest. So if you do have a fledgling, make sure to give them time to take off. Don't assume that just because it's been a half hour that that's been too long and they're in danger, because they could be perfectly healthy like this one, and they just need a little more time to get their flight figured out.
We just had a question regarding volunteering and the kind of fun things that we do. And I would love to emphasize this because I mean, honestly, we have a great staff and we have a great veterinarian, obviously with Dr. Wood, but we would not be able to accomplish this project without our volunteers. We have over 100 volunteers at any given time, and it is hard work, as our executive director answered as well. It's hard work. There's cleaning, there's preparing food, there's feeds of lots of different animals. So you do all kinds of different things. It is rewarding. We do become a family. Obviously, if you're interested in volunteering, you have a heart for animals, as do everybody else that's there. So that's probably the best part about the whole situation is becoming family with other like-minded people who love these wild animals. And of course, the most rewarding thing is watching the release. You could be part of when they first come to our center to the very end when they release. And when you know that you've done everything you can with the care, the feeding, the cleaning, the whatever it takes to care for these animals, to be able to see them go back to the wild, it is absolutely rewarding. And I think if you asked any one of our volunteers, that is probably the most rewarding part of the whole thing. We try to make it as fun as possible, but like Dr. Wood said in her Q&A, you do get dirty. There is, some of it's not so much fun, but it's all part of caring for the animals. So yeah, I encourage you, if you're interested, to come to one of our volunteer classes. If you go on our website, you can click the interested in volunteering, and then there's a couple upcoming classes. Get involved in that. That explains a lot more of what we actually do with our volunteers. But we definitely encourage you, if you're interested, to be part of this amazing project and family. I think I can attest for all of us. And I know there's a couple of volunteers on this right now that I wish they could be able to speak, but I know that who are faithful. I just saw one of our volunteers on here that has been with us for years, and she comes every single Monday, I'm sorry. And she's faithful. So you just become part of the family. So definitely, if you're interested, get on our website and register for that. Anybody else?
It's essential. It's what the volunteers do is absolutely essential, because we wouldn't be able to, no part of this is more important than another, because we wouldn't be able to provide medical care without the teams of people doing loads and loads and loads and loads of laundry and chopping tons and tons and tons of vegetables. And, without those parts, the rest of it just wouldn't work. So I think the fun part is just having the right mindset, having the attitude that it's really cool to get to work with these animals and to get to treat them and release them, and all of the things in between, even when they're dirty and even when they, may not be the most glamorous thing in the world. It's fun to just be there and get to see all these animals and be like Debbie said, be part of something great, and then watch the releases and meet some really fun people along the way.
I'll say that some of the animals that we've had in the last couple of months, I never thought that I would see up close and personal. It's a lot of work doing what we do here, but it's incredibly rewarding. We go on, I'll go on releases to film that stuff and post it to social media. And the funnest part is also the saddest part, which is one of the saddest parts, is releasing them back into the wild, because you don't get to watch their funny behaviors while they're with us anymore. But they do get to go back home and be part of the environment that they are meant to be in. So,
and that's the whole point.
Yeah. And if you enjoy hard work but seeing incredibly rewarding results, this is an amazing place to be.
Yeah, you have to think of it as fun laundry.
Yeah. It's for the bigger purpose. Everything we do, everything you do, whether it's dirty or clean, and that even includes administrative as well, answering phones, that helps caring for the animals. So definitely all hands on deck when it comes to our volunteers. And I am utmost appreciative, as I know Debbie McGuire and everybody on staff is, for our volunteers. We could not do this without them. So very, very much appreciate all of them. And I hope the ones that are here hear me loud and clear. We appreciate you.
Yeah, it literally just wouldn't function without them. And volunteers do get to, watch procedures sometimes, and, just come join in whenever their work is at a lull or whatever it may be. They jump in with other things. So I think the people that we have are, just interested in conservation and biology and animals, and are just learning things along the way. So it's just something to get involved in, and be willing to learn and grow. And so I think it's a positive experience, and it would not function without them.
No, not at all. And I think he asked for fun, and I think the other fun part about this, and I've been working here for almost 4 years, and every day is a new day. Like, there's always something different. You never know what we're going to get in. I mean, when we brought in a snake, I wasn't the happiest person in the world, but it was interesting. Everyone can attest I wasn't the happiest camper, but you just never know what we're going to get in. We never know what the immediate need is going to be. And There could be where a technician needs someone to help hold an animal, to help handle an animal. If you've never done that, that's really exciting, you know, to be part of that. So yeah, there's every day's a new day. So you just never know what the most exciting part of the day is going to be. So
Yeah. You were really excited that day that we got a bat, and you got to,
I thought
you got to
bats were
see that
huge,
bat
and
up
they were like
close.
this little. Yeah, I still learn every day. I go home with the story. My husband's like, "What's the story of the day?" Especially because I answer phones, so that's a whole nother issue of fun. If you want fun, is answering phones.
Yep. It's never a dull moment. Never a dull moment, and it's always rewarding and challenging and interesting.
If it's dull, then we got a problem. There's something wrong.
Never a dull moment.
Never. But anyway, I hope that answered your question.
Well,
That was the only question. Oh, wait, there's another one. Hold on.
oh,
Hold on. It says, how would you characterize the level of government help for wildlife animal care, whether local, state, or whatever? And is it trending up or down? That would be a Debbie question, McGuire. You're on, oh, she's got to put her earplugs back in. I can start with that we are privately funded. We are, I mean, not funded. We are, I'm gonna let Debbie explain that. She could do it way better. She's getting back together.
How to get back together. My ears were getting sore.
Yeah,
that's a really good question. I feel like in the state of California that we have a pretty good group of people with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. We have the, for federal, we have the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Locally, we have great animal controls, at least in the County of Orange. They work so well with us. And you'll get to hear a little bit from some of them later today. But I do feel it's trending up, you know, as it's a great group of people. What I really liked with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife is just recently they changed and are actually helping the mountain lion. You know, where it used to be they didn't want to get involved too much with them. I mean, they are a big cat, dangerous cat, but they've lost so much habitat and they've dwindled down so much that in certain areas, when they're not, you know, encroaching too much in where we encroached onto their area, when they're not too bad in that area, I see that there's a great need for them. They keep it's the whole balance in nature, right? If we start taking off the top predators, then we get too much of the little guys exploding. So we do need to keep that balance. And I see that our local and federal agencies are working better at doing that. How about you, Dr. Wood?
Yeah, I would agree. I've been happy to work with both fish and wildlife and animal control. I feel like those are the ones that impact what we do the most. I always wish that there were more funding, you know, but I do feel like there's good support, there's good resources, there are good like-minded people at all those levels. I think the funding issue, you know, it's a matter of convincing people that what we do doesn't happen in a bubble, you know, that they're, like we were talking about earlier about ecosystem services, it really involves the protection of the ecosystem that impacts all of us. Wildlife is not separate from human health. The two are, you know, completely intertwined. So I think we just need to continually, in events like this, with all the outreach that we're doing, continually try to drive that point home so that we get more funding support. But I think the intention support, especially from those two groups, animal control and fish and wildlife, is definitely there.
I'll say on the funding aspect that a lot of the funding comes from a lot of the legislation that is passed, especially in California by our Senate, and also the federal stuff. Like the gas taxes that exist in California help fund taking care of oil spill cleanup. And they also provide additional things. There's a lot of other taxes in California, and it's like at the federal level too. The problem is one of the things that I have friends on the East Coast working on this right now is trying to communicate with stakeholders in the public about, you know, where all the different parts fit in and how this all interconnects and how tax money and other things sort of work to cover this stuff, because a lot of people don't really want to pay taxes, or it's more that you don't really know where your tax money is going. And you don't really understand a lot of the laws and the policies that exist out there. But it's getting better because there's more and more organizations and more people that are trying to teach people the connection between government, organizations like ours, other rehabbers, and protecting wildlife. And like one of the things that I studied in school is there's two fields of economics. There's environmental economics, and then there is ecological economics. And those two fields are working to put a price tag on ecosystem services, which helps demonstrate the value of this stuff, and then it helps teach people and show people what's worth protecting, and it actually will save people money in the long run for protecting wildlife and protecting the environment. So I think it's getting better. It's way better than it was in the past, but there's still a lot of room for improvement.
That's a good summary, because I think it's one part education, it's one part legislation, but that third part is kind of a different way to go about it that almost feels cold, but it's essential, that economics part, where if you put a price tag on things and show the community what these services actually cost or would cost to replace, or the monetary benefit, then that speaks in a way to people that aren't necessarily as passionate about conservation in its intrinsic sense. So I agree. We're going about it from all these different angles of attack. The legislation part that Matt mentioned that's really interesting, and Debbie can talk more about it, is that there's a gas tax and oil that goes into a fund, right, Debbie, that oil companies wind up it's not the community doesn't pay for oiled wildlife. It's paid for in your gas, because the gas companies are then required to pay into a fund that then pays us when we get oiled wildlife.
Right. So it goes into a big super fund. I think it's a couple $2 billion. Everybody that transports oil either by land or sea through our waters or highways get taxed, and that money goes into this fund. Because they would be the polluters, right? If a tanker spills, or if a gas truck flips over like it did up in LA earlier today and spill into a waterway. We have an oil spill, by the way. They need to be responsible. So it's kind of like paying into an insurance company, right? And that way there's money there ready to go to help not only the wildlife, but all the other natural resources that are affected from a spill.
Yeah.
Well, if there's any more questions, up next is Mallard Ducklings with, once again, with our vet tech, Denise Brown, who will cover a little bit over the ducklings that come into our center, and a little bit about the care and what goes into that. All right.
So this is one of our mallard ducklings. We have about 1,000 mallard ducklings who come through our center every single year. Some of them are genuinely orphaned and need our help, and so we're very happy to be providing help for them. But we also have mallard ducklings who come to us who only need our help because humans intervened when it wasn't necessary. So if you do see ducklings with their mother, please give mom the benefit of the doubt that please give mom the benefit of the doubt that the mother duck knows how to care for the ducklings and raise them properly. Even if you don't see a water source nearby, that doesn't mean that mom doesn't know about one. If you see them coming to a situation that looks dangerous, like crossing the road or walking very close to a storm drain, you can be a crossing guard for them. That's really helpful. So if you can safely alert other drivers, for example, that they're crossing the street, or if you can stand in front of the storm drain so that they'll walk around it and not risk walking into it, those are really good things. But if they're with their mom, please don't touch them just because you think the road looks a little bit dangerous. That scares mom away. And then sometimes, you know, because that's very scary for her, she doesn't come back, and now you've created orphans by accident. So when they come here, they get greens, they get special duck food, they get water to play in, they have heat, and they go through various phases as they get older and more independent. They have more space and more activities that they can do until eventually they are in their full adult plumage. They go outside, and then we release them in safe places. But if you are observing mallard ducklings yourself, please be an observer, be a crossing guard if needed, but don't intervene if everybody looks healthy and is with mom. Just watch, but don't try to grab them or touch them, because that's most likely going to backfire. Ducklings are relatively independent. Some of our other babies need to be bottle fed or need to have very special nutrition. These, of course, do have specific nutritional needs, but they can be met with a small number of products. So when they come in, we'll examine them, check their size, check to make sure they don't have any injuries, check if they're dehydrated or not, just make sure everything looks good. And then we'll put them in with other ducklings. They're very social, so they make friends really quickly. Other ducklings their own age. And then we, mostly to keep them healthy, we just give them the right types of food, make sure they get enough water, make sure they get the amount of heat that they need. And as they get larger, they'll go to larger and larger spaces. If they come in cold, we might put them in an incubator. Some of them might have like a limp, or they might be dehydrated, or they might have hypoglycemia if they haven't eaten for a long time. So when they first come in, they might get some vitamins or some extra fluids. Watch out for certain developmental things. But that's basically it. Ducklings are a little bit easier to take care of themselves, but they do need someone to make sure that they're getting the right food and having what they need for several weeks before they're ready to be on their own. Okay, so this is one of our mallard.
That was great information about the ducklings. I loved how she was talking about that. You know, I know a lot of people, one of the most common phone calls we get is, mom and her babies are crossing a busy street. What should I do? Honestly, the only thing we would want you to do is be a crossing guard and help her get across the street. The other common thing that people say to me is that there's no water source around here. Well, being in Huntington Beach or Orange County, I can assure you we have water around us. So, you know, honestly, what Denise was saying was, don't take things in your own hand. Don't try to take the babies and save the babies, because mom will fly away and then we have abandoned babies. So really just be the crossing guard if you must do anything, and make sure they get across the street safely. And let mom be mom, and let mom take her where she needs to take them. Also, same thing in backyards. We get those phone calls a lot when it comes to ducklings of, there's mom and the babies in my backyard. What should I do? Should I feed them? No, don't feed them. Mom feels like your house is safe. If you don't want them in your backyard, just open your backyard gate and shush them out. She'll go find the next water source. And I know that sounds really insensitive, but to separate them, there's the best chance of survival is with mom. And so mom knows the area, mom knows where to go, and mom's going to do everything she can to protect these babies. And so, yeah, it's a very common conversation on the phones. Again, one of the things I repeat probably 10 to 20 times a day. So let the babies go with mom.
More often than not, we can trust that nature will do what it's supposed to do, and that, you know, moms of all species are amazing at just natural instincts and knowing what to do and being very resourceful. They know what they're doing. More often than not, we mean well, but we really don't need to intervene. And if you're seeing like an obvious injury or an obvious threat, you know, like we've talked about before, give us a call. We can talk with you about whether it really is truly something where you need to get involved. But more often than not, when in doubt, you probably don't need to be involved, and those mamas will figure it out. Oh, that's a great question. Is it just
It is a
moms, or
great
do
question.
dads ever help?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really is.
That's so good. It depends on the species. It depends on the species. That is such a good question. That's so funny. It depends on the species. I
It's
think
often the mom that wants to take the place.
Morning
So.
doves,
mom
morning
does a lot.
doves, Canada geese, swans and geese. The males will help as well. The snowy plover. The dad actually, the mother, after she hatches the egg, the dad takes over and raises them. So dads can come in too. Sorry,
Yeah, it
dads
just
out
depends-
there, but you
just
know it is
depends
going to
on
be Mother's Day, so we were kind of
Yeah. So there you go.
so sorry about that.
It depends on the species.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
males of lots of species will at least, help collect food and things like that. I think the brunt of it of protection often falls on mom, but not always. Not always. Yeah, Canada geese are a great example.
I'll add on the water sources that one thing that you can do, it's sort of surprising, is that ducks will go to non-traditional water sources. And there's actually a lot of water sources in Orange County. Most people literally, when they think about looking around and stuff, they're looking at ground level. They don't really think about looking at from like an aerial shot of like Orange County. But if you were to use aerial photography to look at Orange County, you'd find out that there are a lot of water sources when you're going over this area. And a lot of these ducks, since they're basically flying above, they know where most of those are. Us humans, we're always on the ground, so you don't really see those in your neighborhood or in your normal area, but they're there. And there's a lot of them.
And they can travel up to 3 miles. Is that correct, Debbie? I think, I heard you say that to somebody. The mom can travel with the babies up to 3 miles, if not farther, for the next water source. So it definitely is. Mom knows what she's doing. The other thing that a lot of people will say, well, I don't want to just shush them out of my backyard, or they're not leaving my backyard, or any animal. There's possums, there's raccoons, there's ducklings, whatever it may be. My first question is, are you feeding them? And 9 times out of 10, they are. And so if you don't want these species in your backyard, don't feed them. Don't leave cat food or dog food outside. Bring it inside. Let your animals eat it inside, because those animals will go and eat whatever is available. So I always say that don't give them water. They know how to drink. They know how to get food. They're not going to starve in your backyard. If they're there, they will not starve in your backyard. There's something in your backyard that they like. And so, and if there's no food there, they'll move on. So just keep that in mind as well. I think that's really important, a good education moment right there of if you don't want these animals in your backyard, don't leave food for them.
Mm-hmm. And we don't want them dependent on people. That's huge. We talked about that earlier, that well-intentioned people may want to attract wildlife, but if those wildlife then learn to be dependent on humans, they may then approach other humans that are not as friendly towards wildlife, and that may create a problem. We don't want imprinting where they are too used to people. We want them to have a healthy fear of humans, because that's ultimately what's best for them.
We're not doing them any good by feeding them. And I know that sounds really insensitive, but like Dr. Wood said, if they get dependent on us, and if you move or something else happens, then they don't know how to survive in the wild. And that's why they're called wild animals, is to survive in the wild.
And the things that we feed them might not even be appropriate,
Exactly.
You
Then
don't want to give veggies to rabbits. Yeah, right.
Yeah, they won't know how to find their food that they need in the wild if we're feeding them nuts and all this other stuff that they wouldn't generally find in the wild. So definitely stuff that we have the best intentions, but it doesn't help the animals at all to survive.
All right, so next up, we have our partners and friends at the Aliso Viejo Animal Control talking about what they do, the services they provide, and what you can do to sort of cut down on problematic wireless encounters that you may have.
Hi, I'm Sergeant Kyle Warner with Mission Viejo Animal Services. I've been in animal services for 12 years. I was originally with Orange County, and recently I've moved down full-time to the city of Mission Viejo. I'm the Senior Animal Control Officer for the city, and we cover a large area in South Orange County that covers about 300,000 residents in 5 different cities, including Mission Viejo, Rancho Santa Margarita, Laguna Niguel, Laguna Hills, and Aliso Viejo. We also cover a lot of areas with open space that has a lot of wildlife interfaces.
Hi, I'm J.R. Stewart. I'm an Animal Services Officer for Mission Viejo as well. I am currently assigned to investigations, which means I'm in charge of cruelty cases and vicious dog cases. I've been an Animal Services Officer for 16 years, and 10 of which have been with the city of Mission Viejo.
Can you talk about some of the services we cover?
Yeah, Mission Viejo Animal Services has a broad range of services for the public, including education outreach on wild animals and all animals in general. We have a robust volunteer program. We have lots of volunteers that help us with dogs, cats, rabbits, all the small animals. We have field services, which covers anything from all the stray animals, wildlife, injured animals, barking dogs, dog bites, cruelty investigations, everything pertaining to animals except for pests, like rats and things like that. So.
And as we're moving into spring, obviously we're getting a lot busier with our baby wildlife and our fledgling birds.
Yep.
Is that some of the calls you've handled today? You know?
Yes, we get a lot of fledgling bird calls. For those of you who don't know what a fledgling bird is, it's a baby bird that's learning how to fly. So they don't just know how to fly from the nest, they fail and fall on the ground, and they're on the ground for a few days until they learn how to fly. So we're doing a lot with that because people think they're injured or they need help, but they just need to be left alone. We also deal a lot with right now with baby ducks. They are falling down storm drains, getting stuck in places, going in people's pools.
Crossing major highways.
Yeah, crossing major roads. They're stopping traffic. So that's a big part of our day right now. Also, coyotes are out, and the babies are coming out, so they're causing a lot of concerns with people, and they're calling. And yeah.
So it's getting hotter out now also, so we have a lot of increase in our snake calls.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we are getting increased level of snake calls. It's really important to call animal control for snake calls because we can come out and assess what type of snake it is. If it's a non-venomous snake, we're not going to remove it from the area, and if it is a rattlesnake, we'll relocate it to an area that's unpopulated. It is important to call us because if you're not sure what kind of snake it is, you don't want to be messing with a venomous snake. And unfortunately, a lot of people kill the good snakes. They kill gopher snakes because they think they're venomous, or they kill the king snakes or coach whips. But snakes are really important to our ecosystem. They are really great at keeping the rodent population down. So we don't kill snakes. So please call us, and we'll come out and assess the situation and take care of your snake issue.
So JR, if you do pick up an injured wild animal in the field, what do you do with it?
Well, our officers go out and assess the situation, and if it is injured and needs human intervention, what we do is we transfer it to our partners in rehab. One of the partners we use a lot is Wetlands and Wildlife in Huntington Beach. So we do transfer a lot of injured birds, our baby ducks that needed rescuing, injured snakes, baby raccoons, baby opossums that are injured, anything that requires rehabilitation. We use our local rehab facilities. We partner with them to help the animal.
So a lot of times we hear on social media that not to call animal control when someone finds wildlife because they're afraid that we're going to euthanize it. We don't euthanize wildlife. We do transport it to local rehabilitators. And it's important that you leave the animal in the location that it's at and allow us to assess it in its actual environment. A lot of times we have people that take the animal out of its environment and take it home with them and then call us. For instance, we had someone pick up a baby deer, a fawn, and took it actually to her house. And those are the situations that we want to avoid because that fawn would actually, we had to take it back and locate where it was at and release it back to its mother. You recently had a call about a great horned owl.
Yes, yesterday, some concerned people called about an owl that was on the ground, a baby owl, and they were concerned it was injured and it needed help. So I came out to assess the situation. I assessed that it was a fledgling great horned owl. Nearby I located a pine tree where the nest was and the parents. And so I explained to them what fledgling birds are. We kept it in a safe spot, and we called back today and reported that the fledgling had flown off. So,
and if they would have picked up that bird themselves and taken it to a rehabilitator, that could be detrimental to that animal's survival, where it is in the stage of its life where it's actually on the ground, and people may assume it's injured for that reason.
Yeah, the best thing was to just leave it alone and let nature be nature, and let the parents will take care of it when it's on the ground. And it just took a day and it flew away.
So it's important to leave the animal where it's at and then give the professionals a call, and we'll come out and assess it where it's located. Okay. JR, we have received some questions from the Wetlands and Wildlife supporters. You want to answer some of those?
Sure.
Okay, the first question was, what is the most common wildlife call that you encounter?
The most common wildlife call we encounter, generally speaking, is coyotes. This time of year, spring, we get an influx in wildlife calls. We get a lot of baby bird calls. We get a lot of baby duck calls. We get a lot of snake calls. Those take a lot of our time this time of year responding to those calls.
Great. The second question, if there was one thing that you could tell the public, something they should know, what would it be?
The thing I would like the public to know the most is there's a big misconception about animal control or animal services. A lot of people think we just kill things, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. We all love animals, and our goal is to save animals, and we work with our wildlife rehabbers. We work with rescues. We do all kinds of things to save animals, and euthanasia is an absolute last resort where the animal could not be saved.
So even from a hummingbird to a mountain lion?
Yeah, we treat all animals the same. Even if we have a hummingbird, we have hummingbird rescuers that are licensed with Fish and Game to do rehab that we transport for them. We recently had a mountain lion that we took to a rehab facility, so we treat all animals the same. Yeah.
We've gone as far as San Diego and up to Big Bear Zoo.
Yeah, we recently transferred a fox up to the Big Bear Zoo. So we'll go a big distance to transport animals that need help.
Great. Okay, the third question. What is your favorite kind of call to go on regarding wildlife?
My favorite personally is rattlesnake calls. I think they're fun. I never get tired of doing them. They're exciting, and they're my favorite wild animal.
Okay, number 4. What does the majority of your time look like when you're responding to calls about wildlife?
When we respond to wildlife calls, typically the majority of our time there is speaking to the public and educating them on why we're there and why we're going to do what we're going to do, and educating them on that particular animal, and letting them just know generally about that animal and what's going to happen to the animal, or just generally education to the public takes up a lot of our time on calls.
Great. Yeah. What is a common topic or subject that you have to educate people regarding wildlife?
Leave it alone. I tell people this all the time, that wildlife has survived without human intervention for millions of years. They're really good at surviving, and human involvement is when it's absolutely necessary. And that's why it's important to call officers, because we will come out and assess the situation. And a lot of the time, the best method is to just leave it as it is, and it didn't need help. And that's the most important thing I think people should learn about wildlife, is to just let it be.
Great. What should we know about the services that you carry out?
The services we carry out, we have a wide range of services. Our sheltering services, which is all the animal care when we get animals in, and then we have our field services. Our field services has a wide range. We pick up even things small like injured rodents, or sick animals, stray dogs, aggressive dogs. We deal with dog bites. We do cruelty investigations, barking dog investigations. We enforce the leash law, so a lot of people have their dogs off leash at parks, and that's very problematic and causes a lot of issues, so we do enforce that law.
That causes a lot of issues with local wildlife too.
It does, yeah. A lot of times people have their dogs off leash on trails, and the dogs are running through nesting bird sites and causing a lot of problems for wildlife. So it's really important to have your dog on a leash at all times.
Okay, the seventh question. We see raccoons on our property. What can we do to discourage them?
Well, with raccoons, they're one of the few wild animals that will defend themselves and even come after you. They're fairly aggressive, especially the big mamas if there's babies around. So with raccoons, as for animal services, animal control, we don't remove healthy wildlife. If it's in your backyard, what you want to do is discourage them. So raccoons will be in your yard basically for food. So they're either going to have pet food that's left out, fruit trees, vegetable gardens, trash is another one, or they'll tear up your grass for grubs in there. So ways you can discourage them is if you have a garden or fruit trees, you can actually spray all your fruits with cayenne pepper and water, and they're not going to eat it, and then when it's ready, you can just wash it off and eat it. Other things you can do is abatement things like motion sensored sprinklers you can buy really cheap that will, when they come by, it sprays them. Motion sensored spotlights to discourage them. So just basically making it an undesirable place for them to be.
Great. What is your favorite part of your job?
My favorite part of my job is just that every day is different. You could get just crazy calls and you're just dealing with wildlife all day, or every call is different and you just never know what you're going to get.
From domestics, wildlife?
Could be anything.
Everything.
You can go from an aggressive dog call to a rattlesnake call to a baby bird call to then you're crawling in sewers getting baby ducks out. You never know what's going to happen next.
This isn't on there, but about how many calls a day do we get? I mean, one officer.
One officer?
Like about 10 to 15 calls?
A slow day would be 10 to 15 calls. 20 calls would be a busy day. Yeah.
So we're busy out there.
Yeah, we're very busy.
What is the weirdest thing you've encountered on a call? Let's keep it G-rated, JR.
Weirdest thing? I guess most obscure is I had a call for two alligators that escaped somebody's yard. She had them as a pet in a baby pool, and they escaped and went to the neighbor's yard. And they weren't very big, but you didn't expect alligators in Orange County.
So we do deal with quite a few exotics as well, not just wildlife. So we do have people that have bobcat hybrids and alligators. Some are permitted, some are not. So it is a factor of what we do in our job. Okay, last question. What can the public do to cut down on problematic wildlife encounters?
Well, they can call us and we can educate them on the animals. So a lot of people will call us about coyotes and they're misinformed about coyotes, and so we'll go out, an officer will go out and speak to them and address their concerns and let them know what they can do to protect their pets, or what they can do to their yard, or just educate them on coyote behavior and ways that they need to change their behavior to address that coyote. We also get a lot of calls for snakes. So when an officer goes out to remove a snake, we can actually educate them on how they can snake-proof their yard. So it's important to call us because it's not just us coming up and grabbing an animal. We're going to sit there and talk to you and educate you and let you know what you can do to minimize the interaction in the future between humans and wildlife.
I think the biggest thing is just enjoy wildlife from a distance.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, don't go try to pet a raccoon or make a coyote your friend. No. Just watch them from a distance.
That was a great ending quote from him.
Yes.
I'm
super excited about this segment because one of the biggest myths that I get on the phone is animal control, or they're just going to euthanize them. And that's just not the case. They are our friends. We have a great relationship with them. And so if there's any chance of survival of the wild animal, they will bring it to us. If it's questionable, they will bring it to us, because we are the ones who will be able to take a look at it and to make a determination. And they gladly bring all wildlife to us. So I would love for everybody on this call right now to please go spread the word that animal control is our friend. We love them. If you aren't able to retrieve and bring us the animal control will. Please rest assured that they will.
We're getting lots of questions during this talk. So one was about if they got a rattlesnake call and it turned out to not be a rattlesnake. I think that's why it's so important to call them, because like the officer said, they can come out and assess the situation. And there's just such a wide variety of situations. The situation might be totally different if it's not the species that you think it is. So that's why it's best to default to an expert. And the other question is, are there other misidentification issues? And I said that songbirds are definitely a tricky one. So we'll have members of the public text us a photo of a songbird, and we sometimes send that out to our songbird expert because it's so difficult to ID them, and we need to know what species we're dealing. Not the rules don't apply the same to all species. So a lot of the advice we give is species dependent. And then we're getting some questions also about exotic pets. So the legality of having an exotic pet really depends on the species. So there are a lot of exotic pets that are legal. There's a long list of pets that are illegal in California. Some notable ones are ferrets, possums, sugar gliders. There are quite a few that are illegal here. The reason that ferrets are illegal here is because they threaten the native black-footed ferret population, which is an animal that is on the endangered species list, and an escaped ferret would cause problems for that animal in the wild. But there are people that do cross out of California, buy these animals and bring them back in. That is not legal, but you can still seek medical care from a veterinarian, and an exotics vet will not report you. We do still want them to receive good medical care, even though we discourage them being in the wild. As far as legality, animal control isn't typically the one confiscating. It's usually a fish and wildlife issue, and they're usually the one enforcing those laws. I think that the calls that animal control gets about exotic pets is usually when those pets are causing problems. If you have a lion and it's growling and bothering your neighbors, or you have an escaped alligator and they're dealing with I think the issues of escapes and problematic pets and noise complaints and things like that. I think Fish and Wildlife is actually enforcing the keeping of those animals.
All right.
I think those are the only questions.
Next up, we have a video that we created. See if you guys can guess the favorite food of some wild opossums that we have. We offered them a selection of food, including kibble, grapes, and apples, and saw which ones they enjoyed the most. And if you want, you could drop into chat what you think they would like the most. And I've gotten some emails on today asking about where a food eating contest video is. And however, we tried to get that video. However, they are wildlife. They have their own personalities, and they are sentient. And sometimes they just choose not to cooperate. And that happened to be the case this time. They, instead of doing that particular event, they chose to try to go back to sleep or burrow under the blankets, or were not very interested in food. So yeah, just drop what you think the answer to out of those things, out of grapes, kibble, and apples, you think they will enjoy more, and we'll see who's right.
Go ahead and type it in.
Yep.
Apple. Jane says apple. I like apples.
Yeah, they're good.
Anybody else? Kibble, apple, or grapes?
Well,
Okay,
Well,
well,
let's just see. Let's see.
Bill's AD.
Don't know what that is.
It's
A good guess.
it's a good guess. We didn't put that out. They probably would like that.
It's a high calorie dense prescription food for hospitalized animals that's highly palatable and full of calories and fat.
Everybody likes.
So we're getting ready for our food preference test. We're going to use opossum purple right now to see what purple would like to eat. If I can get you out. Come on, baby.
Sorry, I thought I hit that. And all my dirt.
Over to, we have grapes, kibble or apples, and sniffing the grapes. Grapes.
We'll cut the middle section out.
Maybe we still need holy fingers.
Well, Debbie McGuire, would you know that?
Well, normally they like to try a little bit of everything, but these two in particular just wanted the grapes that day. And then we took out like some others to try to do the food eating experiment, who could eat it faster, and they all ran away like you said. So you just never know, right?
Yeah.
Just never know.
So next up, we have our vet tech, Denise, talking about opossum.
Even though I pet him sometimes. Not on camera, that's for sure. So, Denise, how old do you think this possum is?
So probably about 8 to 9 weeks old. When they're first born, so they're marsupials like kangaroos. They give birth and then the babies go directly into a pouch. And when they're very first born, they're the size of a bumblebee. They have no fur, they have no eyes, they have no ears. And they go into mom's pouch for the first 4 to 6 weeks of life. Then they start developing fur, and around 6 weeks they start climbing around outside of the pouch, at least some of the time. And they have nice fur to keep them warm. And so this guy is probably about 8 weeks old based on his weight and the development that he has.
Okay, and how did it get here?
We have people bring them from all sorts of different reasons. We have people who find one that got injured. We have people who find them that fell in their pool, that their dog or their cat has either caught one of them or their dog or cat has scared away mom and this one got left behind. We also, sometimes things happen where they do fall off of mom a little bit earlier than they should and they don't end up getting reunited, and so they need a little extra help before they're ready to live by themselves.
So this particular opossum can't feed itself at this point, correct?
He can't feed himself completely, so he can eat on his own, but he's not developed enough to do all of his own food finding and eating enough food. So he also needs help for us to both provide him with food and actually feed him.
Okay. And explain that process.
So most animals we would feed with a syringe and a nipple, kind of like a baby bottle, but there are some based on their size or their species who can't suck on the nipple properly. It would be very easy for them to breathe in the milk into their lungs and they would choke. We don't want that. So we actually treat these a little bit like very, very small kittens or puppies, and they're actually tube fed. So we have special opossum formula that is formulated for opossum nutritional needs. It's not cat formula or cow's milk, it's opossum formula. And we use a syringe and a feeding tube. And the feeding tube goes into his mouth and directly into his stomach, and then we can put the correct amount of food for him and the correct amount of fluid, and we know that he's not going to choke. So he was already tubed this morning, so we're not going to do it again when he doesn't need it, but that's how we do that, and then they start licking and chewing things on their own until eventually they're eating enough food by themselves that they don't need to keep being tubed.
Right. So, so many people think of possums, I think of the big possums.
Yes.
And they think, oh, they have rabies, they have this, they're bad, they're this. Tell us, we know that's a myth, because we work here, but tell us truly what the benefits are of opossums.
Well, I'm biased because I think they're cute. But generally the benefits, they eat lots of insects that you don't want in your yard. They eat lots and lots of ticks. They eat all sorts of different insects and bugs. The other thing is that they have some myths about the illnesses that they can transmit, and they can't transmit rabies. Because they're marsupials, their body temperature is actually lower than a lot of mammals, and it is almost impossible for them to contract rabies. So there's really not cases of opossums transmitting rabies to dogs and cats because it's very, very unusual for them to have rabies in the first place. The other thing is sometimes people say that, oh, a possum tried to attack my dog. And of course, it's always possible, but generally speaking, opossums are defensive animals, not offensive animals. So they don't like to attack things. If they see something that scares them, or just if they see an animal they're not expecting, they're unlikely to attack it. What they're much more likely to do is freeze, and in the classic, play possum, so pretend to be dead. It's very unusual that they would attack an animal unless it was really, you know, a very small animal, or if there was something, you know, if it was an exceptional circumstance. But typically they would rather play dead and run away than attack an animal that they don't need to interact with.
So, speaking of playing dead, because this is also another common thing, people call and say, there's a dead possum. How long generally do they play dead like that? And do we just need to walk away from it? Like, how does that work?
So it can vary. Part of it is physiological. So sometimes when they play dead, it's not their choice to kind of come out of it. It's a reaction that they have to let wear off, kind of like the fainting goats on YouTube. But it could take several minutes. But if you're there and they sense that you're there, it's going to be much harder for them to feel comfortable again. So the best thing to do is to walk away out of where they could see or smell you, and then just wait. If they're still there in half an hour and it doesn't look like they've moved, that might be a cause for concern. But if it's just 5 minutes, it might just be because they still know you're around.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
That was a great video. Yes, Denise is very knowledgeable. As you can see, she's doing most of her videos when it comes to the actual caring of the animals. She's a gem, and we're super thankful for her, as well as all of our techs and volunteers. But it's nice to have an educator being able to do these videos because she knows how to teach. She is. I didn't see any other questions that weren't answered, but that was a great segment on opossums. They are cute when they're little.
Next up, we have our friends from Endemic Environmental Services, starting with Kent, who's head of drone services, and he'll be talking about using of drones in science and ecology conservation work these days, and reason for, I'm really glad that he came on, because a lot of people are using drones now, but they don't really know where they can fly, what the laws are, and how to do it without, impacting wildlife. And that's going to be critical, not impact wildlife as this becomes even more popular than it currently is.
Hi everyone, my name is Kent Nairhus and I'm the Director of Drone Operations for Endemic Environmental Services. And how we use drones with ecology is we use the drone as a tool in order to see things like ground nesting birds, coyote surveys, vegetation surveys, stormwater surveys. There's a lot of different things that you can use with the drone, especially since you can attach different cameras to it, like thermal and zoom. Good to go. So some of the questions that we get is, hey Kent, what does Endemic Environmental Services use their drone for? What type of projects do you use them for? Well, one of the main things we use our drone for is park surveys. We help natural parks and rural parks stay natural. That way, we understand that there's a lot of disturbances that can happen. There's a lot of ebb and flows that happen within these nature preserve parks, and it's a lot easier to fly the drone over the area to be able to find and assess problem areas rather than have our ground crew walk through the marsh or walk through the heavy grass and possibly disturbing or destroying habitat. Because what we're trying to do is save the environment, right? So one of the major projects that we were involved with here locally in Orange County was with the Wetland Wildlife Care Center and the Department of Fish and Wildlife. we had a fire that happened right here at our own local Bolsa Chica wetlands. And it was a very large fire. So we went out there with the assistance of the Wetland Wildlife Care Center and the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and we had experts along with our own biologists, and we had experts on the ground with our drone pilot viewing and observing what the damage that had been done. We were looking for burn area, we were looking for surviving animals, and then we were also looking for any dead animals that might have turned up. So again, we were assessing it, and we did this within a matter of minutes rather than a matter of hours or even days it could take to walk through those burn areas. In addition, that helped keep everybody safe, given the fire had only happened a few days prior, and it could be very dangerous walking through those burn areas because there's a lot of hot spots in those areas that you cannot see with your naked eye, and it could cause injury and things like that. So again, at Endemic Environmental Services, that's what we use the drone for, and that's one of the major projects that we help Orange County with. Okay, so one of the many questions that I get is, Kent, where can I fly my drone? Well, one of the first things you should do before you fly is check the app. And what I mean by the app is the Before You Fly app, which is the official FAA app. It will allow you to open it up, and it'll show you maps of controlled airspace or restricted airspace where you're not allowed to fly. But in any of those open areas, you are allowed to fly. It's a great reference to use before you take off. And if you are looking to use drones with ecology, you definitely want to make sure you check the Before You Fly app. Because what that's going to do is that's going to designate wilderness areas. And you are not allowed to fly by law in a wilderness area. Also, you are not allowed to fly within a national park, but you can fly within a national forest. Regardless though, you should always pre-plan your flight to see if there's any migrating birds or any hibernating animals in the area so you do not disturb them. Okay, so some of the best practices that we recommend at Endemic Environmental Services is, 1, be sure to have your drone no lower than 150 feet above ground level. This will allow you not to disturb any ground level animals, such as coyotes, squirrels, rabbits. The drone is up too high to be able to disturb them at that point. But also, what you should look out for is any birds in the area. Sometimes raptors, such as hawks or turkey vultures, in our area here in Southern California, they will investigate the drone. Sometimes they will become aggressive towards it. So if you ever get a bird coming around your drone or doing any aggressive movements towards your drone, it is best practices to land the drone and leave the area. Because again, we do not want to use the drone as a tool to disturb the animals. We're using it as a tool in order to keep their habitat intact. And one of the most rewarding projects that we ever used the drone with was a white-faced ibis survey that we conducted in Fairview Park in Costa Mesa, California. We were just surveying the field looking for other things, and then all of a sudden, with our thermal capabilities, we started seeing ground nesting birds within reeds. And within these reeds, we found about 30 nests of these white-faced ibis. What made this the most interesting part, though, was this was the first time these animals were documented nesting in Orange County. This was all found by the use of our drone. So over the next few months, we went and we surveyed them twice a week with the drone, not disturbing anything. And we viewed everything from eggs to hatchlings to when the birds started flapping their wings on the edge of the banks. And it was a completely successful program. We documented the birds the whole way, and it was all due to the drone and our great team for their best practices while observing these birds. So people always ask me, hey Ken, how'd you get into drones? Well, growing up, I always flew RC airplanes and helicopters, and I used to go to air shows with my dad and my grandpa, so I was always interested in aviation. So at my local RC park, I would always see people trying to attempt to create what was called a quadcopter. Well, DJI out of China in 2015 integrated a GNSS, a Geospatial Navigational Stabilization System, which allowed the quadcopter or the drone to hover without me actually controlling what we call the sticks on the controller. And that was a major game changer for me, including the light bridge technology that they created as well, which allowed me to view live time what the drone was seeing as well. So with a camera on the drone, live time light bridge technology, and stabilization in the air, I was hooked. And I was going out and I was taking pictures of sunsets and beaches and forests and everything else. And I recommend you do the same thing as well. But again, for best practices, check the Before You Fly app or take a course on drone practices, and possibly, if you'd like to, get your Part 107 commercial drone license. One of the #1 things the public should understand about drones and using drones with ecology is check with the local regulations and laws. That's a first start. Because even if the FAA doesn't have that area documented as a wildlife or wilderness area, there could be some sensitive habitat within that area that the local authorities know about and have better knowledge about that situation than the federal government. So it's always good to go in and check your local regulations before you fly, whether it's at a park or down at the beach, because you don't want to run into any hiccups. And again, you do not want to disturb any migrating animals or hibernating or nesting animals, because that's the last thing we want, is for drones to move animals out of the area rather than keep them there and allow us to document them without any invasion. Hi everyone.
He does such a good job. I think one of the most interesting things about that talk is thinking about all the different ways that other industries integrate with wildlife work. You know, there's just so many ways to get involved and to have other types of organizations and other types of jobs kind of weave in with what we do.
Also, it's really kind of amazing that now we're coming up with new ways of, studying wildlife without actually impacting them. Because, a lot of the stuff that I did, at least with my undergraduate work, was we would literally tramp through areas to reach patches to do studies. But now with this technology, you can do an aerial shot from above and never have to impact the wildlife, because observations sort of impact what sort of reactions are occurring. They know you're there. So this sort of helps with that. And it also helps, understanding where you can do this stuff, because like I say, I think everybody in the audience has had some bad experiences with drones, and understanding where the laws are really sort of useful. Next up, we have one of our last speakers, and that is his brother, Barry, from Endemic Environmental. He's an ecologist who's going to talk about urban wildlife ecology and how to decrease and understand impacts and wildlife in urban environments.
Hello, I'm Barry Nearhoos, and I'm president of Endemic Environmental Services. I'm an ecologist from Huntington Beach, and been building a business for the past 12 years with the intent and vision of providing services to protect and manage the environment at the interface of society, the urban wildlife interface, and protecting species and restoring habitat that to enhance our community and the ecosystem in general. So as I was growing in my career, I was actually watching the environment around me grow and enhance in a lot of ways. I know there's a lot of talk about land development, which is ongoing, and of course it's a problem. But luckily in Huntington Beach, we've seen major changes in wetland recovery. Huntington Beach has grown in hundreds of acres of wetland restoration, starting with Huntington Beach Wetlands and the Bolsa Chico Ecological Reserve. At the time in 2006, when they reopened the Outer Bay, that was the largest coastal restoration project in the state of California's history. It was later the Owens River, 62 miles of Owens River was then added to beat that. But I would like to continue to hear these beating of records of continued growth in habitat restoration, especially with wetlands. In California, we've lost 91% of our wetlands, and in Southern California, maybe up to 97%. So every acre, every square foot matters in these areas. And then of course, with that, since it's such a limited resource, we have a lot of packed in rare species that utilize it. And there are so many ecological services that these wetlands provide, not only for aesthetics, clean air, open space to lower stress and emotion, but it cleans water, it feeds cleans the coastal areas. It actually is a nursery ground for fisheries. So they're critical resources, and it's quite amazing to see all these things recovering in such a dense area. Orange County, believe it or not, is the second densest county in California, but yet has the most endangered species per capita than any other place in the state. So it's amazing to see all the different strides that we're doing in here, and seeing a lot of different endangered species recovering. There's actually bald eagles flying in Huntington Beach today, while 40 years ago, they hadn't been seen for decades. So that recovery is what I like to highlight in Orange County, to see the different benefits and the hard work that everybody's doing, coming together as a community. The Huntington Beach Wetlands is a private nonprofit that is restoring it as the largest wetland owner in the county, and continually restore it, which just improves the local environment and really the state in general. Okay, one big topic as we move into the future here of developing our societies and restoring habitat is the interaction between wildlife and our community. So a lot of people question, why are they coming into the neighborhoods, or that, for example, coyotes are learning how to live in the urban space. And you got to remember, these coyotes are 3 years old, 2 years old, 4 years old. This is their reality too. So we're all living together, and finding that way to live in a balance is really important. You know, and live responsibly in our society with these animals. A lot of people have fears that they eat cats and small animals, which of course they do, they are predators. However, they're actually omnivores, and a Cal State Fullerton graduate student found that 50% of their diet is actually fruit from fruit trees. So they're not always out to be taking out cats or anything like that. And on the topic of cats, the cats that are left outside actually create quite the impact on wildlife in general. Recent studies have shown that about 1 billion individuals of wildlife are killed by cats each year, just in the United States. And those cats, they're feeding on mostly cat food anyway, so they're actually killing and not eating it or anything like that. So to be responsible to keep your cats inside and respect nature is really important as we move into the future in this new world of the urban space and wildlife. There are many places that we enjoy to exercise, to exhale, to paint, to draw, to meet somebody for a nice walk. And that's home for a lot of animals, especially like I said with these wetlands. They're really jam-packed in there because that's the only place that they have left. So being respectful of them and understanding the species, I think would be really beneficial to help understand how to manage your own life and respect the life that you, all the lives of the species that you interact with. So currently, with the establishment of our different cities and communities, we're starting to put up fences and stake our claims, which is a new concept in the natural world. People think these days that they own a mountain, while that mountain has been there for 40, 50 million years. So how possibly could one individual or entity possibly own it in a certain philosophy, which is very parallel with Native American philosophy. That is also parallel with a lot of ways that wildlife don't understand what property boundaries are or what who owns what. So they actually do enter territories and your properties just looking for food or passing through because they have their own territory. They don't want to interact with people because people tend to be trouble. So they're mostly going through different areas, including your yards that you might see, and they're just moving along. They're not out to personally attack anybody or steal your food. However, if they do find food, just like we do, they will eat it and they will keep coming back. So don't be the local McDonald's for the raccoons or anything like that. You want to make sure that you are keeping your trash and items covered and put away so that you don't actually become an attractant for these species. So I want to highlight one spot that I've really spent a lot of time working on, and I mentioned it in the beginning, and actually how I started my business, and this is a city park in the city of Costa Mesa called Fairview Park. Fairview Park is essentially an open space nature park that has a lot of biological, historical, and cultural resources right in our backyards. It's a 208-acre city park that bisects on either side of Placentia Avenue and Adams Avenue, and it's right adjacent to Estancia High School. This park holds the largest vernal pool remaining on the coast of Southern California, over 1 acre. And that vernal pool, which is an ephemeral wetland, so it's only fed by rain when we have good rain years, and holds an entire unique community of vernal pool species, including 2 endangered small sea monkey-like species called fairy shrimp, the San Diego fairy shrimp and the Riverside fairy shrimp. There's also a diversity of endemic plants that grow in there, in those ponds, or I'm sorry, in the vernal pool. And those plants only will germinate, sprout, and live their lives within a matter of months, and may not be seen for years until we have good rain. Where that vernal pool is located on the mesa, which they call Costa Mesa, that was an entire Native American village, the Hashiman people. And you can see their midden piles, which is ancient trash, essentially, of seashells, and there's signs of talking about their living quarters and everything, and it's quite a beautiful site, so I can understand why the Hashiman chose that area above the San Ana River. The restoration project that's in that area as well represents about 25% of that park. Has many trails and ponds and a riparian forest that harbors the least-billed vireo, a federally threatened bird, and the California gnatcatcher, which is also a federally threatened bird. Those 2 birds actually weren't occurring in the area until that area was restored in the past decade. And then if you were to go to the east side of Placentia, there's the last native grassland probably in coastal Orange County that still has purple needle grass, the California state grass. What's amazing about that grass is it can live 300 years and the roots grow 20 feet deep. So definitely holding a lot of soil and sequestering carbon. The other species that are in that area are western meadowlarks that are garbling and warbling through in the spring. Western burrowing owls, the last remaining population that winter, are uniquely on our coast, and there's 4 to 5 birds there that are in the winter. So a lot of wildlife photographers flock there to see the owls and the hawks and all the beautiful birds that are occurring over there. And in general, there's lots of people that are just there enjoying themselves. They're flying, they're running or walking, riding bikes, taking photos of themselves, or just enjoying nature in general. So in midst of all this urban sea that we live in, there are a few islands left of open space like Fairview Park that you can go and enjoy. So when you're out enjoying these areas like Fairview Park or the Bolsa Chica Wetlands or Upper Newport Bay, you may come across different animals that are there that are living their lives in a very long cycle of life. That circle of life entails birth, living your life, and death. And so when we're seeing those things, especially during the springtime, you're going to see a lot of reproduction. This is the prime time for all the animals that have been waiting out the cold winter and the dry fall and summer to actually get a lot of resources together and reproduce. Nesting birds in particular, which are protected under the CDFW Fish and Game Code, the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, should not be touched or handled unless they're under imminent threat of death, like going to be hit by a car or something like that. The imminent threat of death, though, if it's a coyote, that's part of the natural cycle of life. So in general with birds nest everywhere. I've seen a hummingbird nesting on a dangling chain. Ducks will nest in a median of a road or in a parking lot at your local grocery store. But if you're out there, you need to leave them alone because they're trying to figure out their own life, and they may have hid their nest in a particular area on purpose. And if you go around searching that area and looking for those eggs and trying to find where things are going on, there might be a crow or a raven or a raccoon or a coyote watching what you're doing, and then they end up predating the nest, which is eating the eggs or the babies, which may have survived. Now, on another note, if you do come across these babies, whether they're rabbits, mice, or ducklings or birds, you should leave them alone because there's also another part of this that even though they're running around and they seem lost, the parents are usually there watching and making sure that they're being fed and managed. 80% of small animals such as birds and some small mammals actually die within the first year. Unlike humans, we only have one baby every few years. We have a lot of investment in how we reproduce. Well, a duck that lays 12 eggs, there's a reason why they lay 12 eggs. It's because many of them don't survive. And it's because those eggs are feeding the babies of other animals, which is what we call the food web. So to start manipulating that by grabbing those animals or reporting them to areas, and if they're in the open space in a wild area, you're actually disrupting the function of that food web and creating a lot of unnecessary work and stress upon yourself as well. So just with a little bit of information and knowledge, learn about these animals and just observe them and appreciate nature for all the aspects of it. Hello, I'm Barry Nerhus.
That is the end of that, and he has a lot of really great stuff on ecology, especially in the urban areas, and a lot of stuff because wildlife have done, a lot of species have done an incredible job of integrating themselves into the ecosystems that are now exist in these urban areas that have developed. And understanding sort of the interactions that go on, and knowing how they sort of move through these areas is very important. And it also helps us to cut down on sort of encounters that we have with wildlife. And it also sort of, understanding sort of the environment around us is incredibly important. So.
And applying all kinds of expertise and technology to it too. We need all the help we can get.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Well, in conclusion, I want to thank each and every one of you for attending our first ever virtual wildlife baby shower. And I hope you enjoyed it. We really enjoyed making it for you. And we, as always, would like some feedback. So any comments that you would like to give us that we can make it better in the future, we would love to hear from you. You can either put it in the chat or you can email us. You could go to our website, www.cccoc.org, and send information there. And of course, so that you all know, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we survive solely by the very generous donations that we have received from each and every one of you. We couldn't do it without you. This center is happening because of your donations, and we really appreciate it. So thank you very, very much.
All right. Yeah, that basically concludes the end of the wildlife baby shower for today. Really thankful for everybody that's showing up throughout the day for this. And hopefully we'll be able to do this in person next year, and it'll be even more people. We could do, have more interesting people come over.
Yes.
And yeah.
Thank
you, panelists.
Thank you for being here, and thanks for your support. Please reach out if you have any questions for us.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.